For some of these kingdoms, we will go into very little detail, and others will go through some more detail. So it kind of just depends. Also, compared to what the regular 7th grade class is doing, we've eliminated a bunch because we don't have time to go through in the level of detail that they do. So we're going to move through this pretty quickly. So we'll talk about every kingdom, though, starting with Archaea. Now, Archaea is a kingdom that it's in its own domain. It has its own kingdom. There's just one kingdom there. And so we already talked about some of the characteristics. Tell me about the number of cells for things that are in the kingdom Archaea. What? They're unicellular. Do you remember the term we're going to use for their complexity, their nucleus? Prokaryote. Good. Yes, they are prokaryotic. So that means, who could tell me what that means? If they're prokaryotes, Maya, they have no nucleus, they have no other organelles. Basically, they are very simple cells. They're very small. So they don't have chloroplast, mitochondria, ER. They don't have all of those organelles like we talked about with the eukaryotes. They get their nutrition, they're autotrophic. So they make their own molecules that they use for energy. And they do this in various ways, which we'll talk about in a minute. They reproduce asexually. So they basically just split in two. And there's a term for that. So the term for when an organism reproduces just by kind of splitting in two, it's called binary fission. The word binary means two parts. The word fission means to split. So basically, binary fission is splitting into two parts. We'll talk about some other organisms that reproduce through binary fission as well. So these things that are in Archaea, they were discovered relatively recently compared to a lot of the other organisms. And we often call them extremophiles. That's what we first started calling them. However, so scientists, when they first discovered these Archaea, they found them living in extreme conditions. Conditions where scientists thought nothing would be able to survive. But when they looked a little more closely, they found these things living there. But since then, they've also found them living in normal environments as well. They basically can live anywhere. But scientists didn't really know this until they knew what to look for. So we have some terms that we use for some of these organisms. Some Archaea can live and thrive at extremely high temperatures. We call them thermophiles. Oh, you have them? Oh, yeah, I include them so we can go through a little quicker. Things that live at low temperatures, cryophiles. Things that live in very acidic conditions, acidophiles. Things that can live in dry conditions, xerophiles. Some live in really salty conditions, halophiles. Or very high pressure, deep down in the bottom of the ocean, barophiles. So these organisms live in sort of all of these places where scientists thought probably wouldn't be able to find living organisms. And so one of the ideas that scientists have is maybe these were the first types of organisms that evolved on Earth. The early Earth had very harsh conditions, much different than what the Earth is like today. So maybe some of these organisms evolved to be able to survive those conditions, and they still remain today able to live in some of those conditions. All right, bacteria. What domain do we find bacteria in?
Oh my gosh.
domain. They are in the bacteria domain.
Okay, oh, I got it right.
What kingdom? Yeah, it actually has a Latin name, Monera. We're just going to say bacteria. And like we talked about earlier in our notes, these are going to seem very similar to Archaea. Right? They are also unicellular. They're also prokaryotes. But they're actually different from Archaea. When scientists study their DNA, they find that they're not that similar to bacteria, even though they're single-celled, even though they're prokaryotes. Bacteria, some of them are autotrophic and can make their own food using sunlight. Others are heterotrophs. They have to consume other things. Bacteria have a cell wall, like what other organisms we talked about? Plants. But it's a different cell wall from a plant cell. Okay, it's made of other materials. Bacteria can reproduce asexually as well, binary fission. There's many examples of bacteria. They're a very diverse group. Examples you may have heard of: E. coli, Salmonella.
Is that what those are?
They're very, very small, much smaller than animal cells or plant cells. So those are some bacteria. This is the head of a pin. The orange colored things are the actual bacteria. Yeah, a pin. Like a pin, like they might sew with. So I'm sure you've heard some names of some bacteria before. So I'm just going to give you a little information about how you actually can decipher the name and what it means about the bacteria. Because bacteria are named using these conventions. So bacteria can be shaped differently. Some are shaped with these sort of cylinder, rod-like shapes. Some have a spherical shape. Others are in sort of spirals. And each of those shapes has a term. Rod-shaped bacteria are called bacillus. Spherical bacteria are called coccus. Spiral-shaped bacteria are called spirillum. And we usually will combine that, the term for their shape, with a term about if they grow together or not. Some bacteria grow in chains, one after another, and the prefix strepto means they grow in chains, like a pearl necklace or something. They grow in clusters, okay? Staple is the prefix. And so, yeah, you guys have heard some of these before, because some of them cause us to be sick, and that's probably why you've heard them. What do you think the name of this bacteria would be? Yeah. What does that bacteria cause? Yeah, that's the bacteria that will cause strep throat. If you have strep throat, you have a colony of Streptococcus bacteria started to grow inside of your throat, damaging the tissue, irritating it, causing it to be inflamed, causing your throat to hurt. How about this group of bacteria? 7? Yeah, this is Staphylococcus. Have you ever heard of a staph infection?
Yeah.
Like that a person could have on their skin? This is an infection with these bacteria. Jake? Yeah, these are strepto because they're growing in chains. Bacillus because they're rod-shaped bacteria. So bacteria are often, we often think of them as harmful. But they're actually lots of helpful bacteria. Inside all of our digestive systems, we have billions, trillions of bacteria that are helping us in our digestion of certain foods. Some of these bacteria provide us with vitamins that we need. Because some of you may have been, if you've gotten sick before, you had a bacterial infection, if you've been on antibiotics, if you've been on antibiotics for an extended period, or very strong antibiotics, it might help your infection, but they might cause you some intestinal distress. Because what happens is, these antibiotics that you're taking, they help to kill the infection in your ear or your throat, but they also kill many of the bacteria in your digestive system, and therefore you have a harder time digesting certain foods, and it leads to sort of digestive problems. Now, usually once you stop taking the antibiotic, they're called gut bacteria, will start to repopulate, and you'll get a healthy population of microbes in your intestine. But until that happens, then you're having a more difficult time digesting certain foods. We also use microbes, these bacteria, to help us make foods. And I'm going to save this video to the end of class, but we'll come back in a while. I want to talk quickly about protists and fungi. Protists we've already studied. You looked at protists last week. We looked at two examples. We looked at Euglena and Paramecium. So these are eukaryotes. The kingdom is called what? No, the domain is eukarya. The kingdom is Protista. And these are single celled. They're unicellular organisms. They're eukaryotic. Some of them are autotrophs, some are heterotrophs, some are both in one organism. They live basically wherever there's water. Some of them actually are parasites. They live inside other organisms. They can reproduce by binary fission, like some of these bacteria. It's a form of asexual reproduction. One parent just basically divides and splits in two. All the offspring, as we've talked about in the past, are identical to each other. Doesn't add any variation to the species. One protist that causes disease, that's a parasite, is a protist called Plasmodium. And Plasmodium is a protist that causes a disease called malaria. You heard of malaria before? Yeah. It's spread by, how is malaria spread? Yeah, through mosquitoes. So this Plasmodium protist can infect mosquitoes, but it doesn't really hurt them. But it gets into their body when they bite a person with. They can spread it from one person to another. They can spread this Plasmodium protist, cause a person to get a fever, to get the disease we call malaria. What? High fever, being very tired, being very sick, losing weight. It depends how severe the infection is. Malaria kills, so it's a disease mostly of the tropics because the Anopheles gambae mosquito is the type of mosquito that transmits malaria, and that mosquito needs year-round sort of warmth. And the protist also needs warmth throughout the year. So like where we live, malaria is not a problem. Right? Those mosquitoes and the protists can't survive our cold winter. But it is a disease of the tropics. It's a disease of Central America, a disease of Africa and Asia, areas that are in the tropics where these mosquitoes can live. All right, I want to finish with fungi today. So fungi are interesting, I think. So a mushroom is probably the example of a fungus that you are most familiar with. So a mushroom that you find in the forest growing out of the ground, the cap is the top part of the mushroom. Underneath are the gills. And those gills are where the mushroom produces reproductive spores. Okay? Spores are tiny little cells that can grow into a new organism. And they come out of those gills, and that's how the fungus reproduces, through these very small spores. The stalk is the central part that holds the mushroom up. And these things, they're actually not called roots. Those are called the hyphae. And these hyphae are where enzymes are released to help break down the material the fungus is going to use for nutrition. So where would you find mushrooms? On your lawn, maybe? Maybe? Where? Not besides in the grocery store. On forests, on like rotting logs. So what these mushrooms that you're referring to, what they do is they grow somewhere where there's a source of organic matter, waste or a dead organism, decaying wood, something like that. And what they're doing is they're releasing enzymes from these hyphae, breaking down that organic material, and then absorbing it as their nutrients. No, the mushroom itself isn't there, but it's eating organic matter that's in the soil. Like if you see a mushroom growing on a rotting log, its hyphae are breaking down the wood of that log and absorbing it. That's their food. Yeah.
I saw a documentary about mushrooms, and with the spore thing, people who like harvest your food for wild mushrooms, they slap the mushroom first, like the spore for harvesting, slaps it away for news.
Yeah, and also
They abuse the mushroom.
one of the things you can do, so if you're ever trying to identify a mushroom, one of the ways you identify is by making a spore print. You take the cap of the mushroom, you put it on a piece of paper overnight, the spores settle, and the color of the spores can help you identify the type of mushroom that it is. So let me just go over these parts. The cap sort of protects the spores that are underneath. The gills are where the spores develop. The spores are actually the reproductive cells. The stalk holds it up in the air. And the hyphae are where it absorbs its nutrients. So it's not going through photosynthesis. People sometimes think mushrooms are plants. They're not plants. We need a source of energy. And that source of energy is typically organic material in the soil. At my house, in the front lawn, we used to have a tree, but it died. We had to take it down. But every spring, in that same exact area, a ring of mushrooms grows every spring. Why does it grow there? What does it have? It has the roots, right? When they cut down the tree, the roots are still in the ground. So these mushrooms are growing, decomposing the roots of that tree that was once there every season. Hold on, so I'm sorry, go ahead, Devin. Also, as you know, puffball mushrooms, when you squeeze them, what comes out? Those are actually spores. That stuff that you see coming out of that puffball, those are spores. You're helping that mushroom reproduce. So here's a diagram showing, let's finish up here, we're not done yet. After we're done with fungi, but we're not quite. Hold on. So fungi release enzymes to digest that matter, and here you see some pictures of that. So this is the hyphae of a mushroom. Jake. Secreting enzymes, breaking down material. Here are the hyphae of a mushroom growing in the soil. You can see them growing out of these, dead leaves here, growing on an orange. Because remember, mold is a type of fungus as well. Fungi are decomposers. They break, and that means they break down organic material. So some of these cause diseases like athlete's foot. Okay? Athlete's foot is caused by a fungus growing on somebody's feet.
Ew.
These fungi can live in warm, wet, damp places. So that's why, like, if you go in the locker room or a public shower, you might wear like flip-flops in there, so your feet aren't on a place where other people are walking, because you could, develop athlete's foot, something like that. It's got a fungus growing in between its toes.
Are you really like take it off with those special ones? That's
No.
Ew, what?
You would need to take an antifungal medication, or you ever see the commercial on TV for toenail fungus medicine?
Yeah. No.
There are fungus that live on people's toenails and start to grow into the.
Guys, keep yourself clean.
These are parasites. This type of fungus actually grows inside of ants, and then it makes them crawl to the top of a tree, and then it takes over their body. The fungus breaks out of their exoskeleton and then spreads its spores. I'll show you that video tomorrow. Why? We'll watch it, don't worry. Let's finish this slide. So, hold on. Antibiotics actually were first discovered in fungi. So some fungi make these special compounds, and they were found that they actually inhibit the growth of bacteria. Penicillin, the first antibiotic to be used as a medicine, was found growing in a fungus that grows on fruits. So here's, for example, this is a fungus growing on a petri dish. This is all bacteria, but what you notice, there's a ring around this fungus where the bacteria won't grow. That's because it's producing these compounds that are toxic to the bacteria, and this is where humans first started to discover antibiotics. Matt? Are they what? Yes. Yep. Yeah. Some going around. Other question, Devin? Question? No. Oh, really? Takes over. Yeah, makes them into like zombie animals. You eat fungi if you eat blue cheese. Blue cheese is made with a fungus that gives it its distinct flavor. Yeast are fungi, so you eat yeast whenever you eat bread. Beer, wine, alcohol is fermented using yeast. Yep. There's lots of uses of fungi in everyday life. Yeah, the blue cheese you get with wings has actual blue cheese, which has actual fungi growing.
When I was little, I was going to try blue cheese. The first time I started I thought I would be blue.